Thank you, NHS, for everything that you're doing. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly say a massive thank you to the NHS. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Footy and Other Sports with yours truly, Taz, and of course
Sean.
our sheep over there. We've got another jam-packed episode for you. We're going to zip through as much as we can because it's been a really busy day in the news. Before I start, however, I just want to dedicate this episode to Captain Tom Moore. Some of you may know him already. He's an elderly gentleman who is 99 years old, and he, in the last couple of days, has been dedicating himself to walking 100. What are you doing? 100 laps of his garden in the build up to his birthday. He had set a modest total of £1,000 initially to raise and smashed that really quickly. And then it was like 10,000 or something, and then he smashed that, and then it was 250,000, smashed that, and I've just looked at the total, and it's basically like literally no, he's literally like just under 10 million in a
10
couple of
million
days.
now. I saw 5.
It's either
Whoa.
about to hit it or it's surpassed it. I literally just refreshed it right before I came on, and I want to dedicate this episode to him. He's put his life on the line, and he's doing something as incredible as that to try raising money for other people who are doing exactly the same. He's an absolute hero, and he's a hero again for doing what he's doing. Yeah, quick moment there.
10. Whoa. 10.
Yeah, in fact, if I refreshed it, I bet it's probably about to hit it. So let's carry on with our show. Like I said, absolutely jam-packed episode, a lot to talk about, so much so I've actually had to write it down or at least list it. Where do I start? I mean, first and foremost, I'll start with sort of left field, Dundee. They're actually in a position where they were the last team in the SPFL voting, who could have maybe decided what was going to happen in terms of the lower leagues. And they initially said maybe that they wanted the leagues to continue whenever they happened, but they literally just U-turned and reversed their decision. Consequently, I believe handing titles to, I suspect, a number of different people.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's very possible that Dundee could end up being, well, in your words, the next Hoffenheim, if they can't work out what they're going to do, or rather because of what they've done or the delay that they basically caused, etc. Question is, do we think other leagues are going to follow suit? I don't know. I can't see it happening in the Premier League. I believe they need to have 14 out of 20 teams who are going to agree. I can tell you maybe half of those teams will definitely not agree. It doesn't benefit Liverpool to cancel the league. Man City, I think, will be fine. Leicester might be fine with it. Chelsea may, but I don't think they'll be for it. United definitely wouldn't want it to end. Sheffield United definitely wouldn't. Wolves wouldn't. Arsenal definitely wouldn't. And that's just the top half. Maybe Everton maybe won't. They may think they've
Arsenal
got a
would.
chance.
Maybe Arsenal, because if the season will be
For the fifth,
frozen,
yeah.
Man
Okay,
City will not be in the Champions League.
I suppose,
Because
yeah. I'd like to maybe think that they've got a bit more kind of ambition and positivity, but yeah, maybe right.
They've got no other choice. They're a
Yeah,
team that won't make the top Champions League. They won't make Champions League if the season continues. We
yeah.
can make that bold prediction right here, right now.
There are a couple of teams, maybe in the middle, who won't really care, so they might just make their decision based on footballing reasons. The bottom sides are going
Newcastle,
to, yeah, they're sort of okay. Palace are okay, but you can be sure that the bottom 5, 6, 7 teams are not going to, are not going to want to descend. So it might actually not make the, the vote. It might be canned. We don't know. We need to move on though.
we have to say the other thing that, unlike Dundee, and unfortunately, it's a bit harsh to say, there are a lot of external factors. We're talking about TV rights, TV deals, commercial factors. These people have an influence on the Premiership. Unlike other leagues, we have an influence on the TV scheduling. Every manager complains that we've got these fixtures piling up. We've got games that have to happen at certain days. So, for example, European teams are able to play Champions League before a Champions League week. They can play on a Friday. We can't. So that's a factors to take into account for the Premiership teams. And Dundee are definitely going to be at Hoffenheim for an unfortunate reason.
Yeah. I guess in the same breath as well, I mean, where there's a risk of EFL clubs actually going bankrupt, aren't there? The thing is, you
Days
might.
away.
That's it. I mean, the thing is, you might freeze a season or cancel a season or something like that. Automatically, you're losing a lot of money, money that these lower clubs can't afford to lose.
Exactly.
And I hope it doesn't happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if, that we do sadly start seeing teams being lost. But then it begs the question, look what this absolute gentleman hero who's done his service and really helped his country in the past is doing right now. He's still trying to do that. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's someone who's done that, raised 10 million, and we're not hearing enough about, footballers or football teams helping out enough of their peers and lower teams. I fully expect, Gary Neville would have wanted to help out Barry, or, for example, his mum's got ties to Barry. I think his dad did as well. But yeah, well,
it's hard to pick on Gary Neville, the guy, as you said, as we both said, and you brought up the news in the first place. He's offered the hotels, so he's probably a hard person to look at.
I'm not criticizing him at all. I'm just saying, like, he's got ties to teams like Bury and Salford. You wouldn't expect him to just throw them under the bus or something like that. But I still would, he owes nothing to specific people from the NHS, but what he's done to offer up his hotel is just a really classy gesture to people he doesn't know, but to people he knows are making a difference.
He's going to suffer as well, by the way, because the Salford are a non-league team. They're going to be suffering as well, the effects as well.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, when you're somebody who's in a better position than other people, it's that's what I mean. It's down to you to sort of look out for others who you might not be able to look after themselves in the same way, financially. So it's really
a difficult topic. It's a difficult topic because we're talking about MPs. MPs have been given an increase for working at home. So people pick on footballers only, but there are a lot of other professions that we can look at as well.
Well, yeah, I think we only focus on the footballers because we're a sports channel, but we can't ignore them, unfortunately. What's next? So the Tour de France. Did say it was going to be a packed show today, everyone. Tour de France is being scheduled to start on the 29th of August. I think that's probably a fairer time frame a fairer time to actually sort of think of hosting it. If everyone's being sensible about the whole situation, I don't see why that's not going to happen. It's an interesting one with that one though, because obviously you have a lot of fans on the roads. Would they be? Would loads of these fans just be fine about, being told not to stand on the side of the road and cheer everyone on? Would the cyclists appreciate not having them in their faces all the time? Because some of the fans do get really close. So I don't know, but I think you're getting some people who are some organisations who are saying we've got to get something done by this time, whereas they're saying we want to start at this time. How quickly did the Premier League and the other football leagues change from, we're aiming to have a ban until the end of April, and then saying, well, you've got to get everything done by the end of June. It's not really fair, is it? I think you and I have had different conversations about the length of time it should take to actually finish a league. You're quite happy with it being a 56-day period, whereas I said, well, they've had their rest. 3 days between games is doable and you would be able to finish it in a month. However, they are human and they will need to recover. They do. I'm not saying it should be just 3 days. But you need to have a sensible gap, or at least 3 days between the first and second game, and then maybe a 4 or 5 day period aside from that. It's the equivalent of basically having a league game followed by a European game, but every week.
Championship seasons, they're tough. They do have those regular games, so you can put that into account.
Yeah, but it's a different scenario for them. I appreciate it, and they've probably got more games left than the Premier League, but it needs to be done. If they want to finish it.
That Tour de France statement you just said, it's extraordinary. Are we talking about a sports-related sports decision or a political decision? Because we spoke about previously that one of the sports ministers had to address the issue. Macron had to address the issue. Are we talking about perhaps an economical-based decision that France cannot afford to lose Tour de France? Belgium had a virtual racing a week and a half ago, weekend before. Are we talking about now it's becoming more political? Because a lot of sports are now having a political impact as well. Premiership having a negative impact. And the topic we're going to talk about later on is definitely a political agenda. There's definitely a political agenda there.
Well, maybe to an extent, but at the same time, I'd argue they're trying to find a way to stage it. And you have to appreciate that in certain sports like cycling, outdoor cycling in particular, these teams are massive. And they actually have a long list of riders, but not all of them will actually be chosen and compete in these, various races. So even if the Tour de France was staged when it might be, it's likely that like Team Ineos, who are now the new name for Team Sky, might already have about 6 or 7 other riders that could go and do another tour of another country. I don't know which one would be around that time, but they might be available to do that. And because they'd obviously want to send their best riders to the Tour de France. So I think it varies from sport to sport. Like I said, I'm a big snooker fan. I think had everything gone on as planned, I think it would have been starting this weekend. And I still don't know when it will be rescheduled to. I don't know when I'll get a refund, if I'll get one at all yet, at least. It's all speculation at the moment. That's the thing. You can sort of predict a certain day, and maybe the Tour de France are being very brave about saying this is when it's going to happen. But I think they just want to keep faith in humanity, sort of pulling together and doing the right things and being sensible. it's a big enough gap. It's about 4.5 months between now and then.
Based on predictions. At the end of the day, everything's currently is based on predictions or modelings. That a lot of models that continuously change, whether if the lockdown is working and therefore people are able to follow through with hosting these events. We spoke about Tour de Girona that had to be postponed. So hopefully, as you, it's visual thinking for all the sports. Yeah, and I think I have to say, a brilliant suggestion that from this podcast by Taz to suggest that even to help fulfill a season, have riders from these big teams go to different areas, and perhaps that may help to address that particular conundrum.
Ultimately, I mean, as a rider, it's sort of the Tour de France is the pinnacle. So you want, and you can only pick a certain number of your riders. So it gives the riders another opportunity to sort of go to one of these other tours, which, maybe your top riders would have been going to if it was all going ahead according to plan, to prove that they deserve a spot in the top batch of riders. So yeah, we will see what happens with that as well. But what else have we got left?
Big news.
Well, it was what your topic. Go on then.
Okay, so we're talking about political agendas. Donald Trump earlier has stated that for the economy to try to address the collapse that it's experiencing, they will need quite a few people to help advise him. The two big names that stood out for us as a sports podcast show I should say, Dana White and Vince McMahon. And that's extraordinary because Vince McMahon, business associate of Donald Trump, political associate because of Linda McMahon, is he really qualified? Although he's had a very successful business, it shows that we've got a company and an economy that's there to help the few and ignore the many. And furthermore, what's been extraordinary over the last few hours, on 15th of April, a lot of wrestlers has been released from their contracts. Even a wrestler, Rockstar, we all know as Rockstar Spud from TNA, he actually was crying on Twitter about being released. We've seen a lot of big wrestlers in the name of Rusev. Rusev's been released. Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Eric Young, EC3, again released from WWE. It's been catastrophic. And whilst me and Taz spoke beforehand saying it could be helpful in terms of reducing the demand on the business, and because these wrestlers didn't want to risk their health because WWE are showing live events at this time, it just shows that it's a very unstable time and these wrestlers are being tossed aside like they're pieces of meat, and it's just ridiculous. We all like wrestling, like the product of WWE, but these are men at the end of the day, men and women that have just been released, and it's just ridiculous. It's really sad. There's a host of wrestlers, but I'm not going to regurgitate information. You can see it, and it's just ridiculous. What do you think is good or bad? Because they can't even go to AEW. AEW cannot afford these.
If you look at the list that you've mentioned, a large majority of them are underperforming or not performing at all. So the releases made sense, like EC3 made sense. I think Gallows and Anderson actually wanted to leave anyway, so maybe that made sense. Rusev, a little bit of a surprise, but that's probably as far as the surprises go, if I'm honest. I think the names you mentioned aren't surprising at all. I think
Eric Rowan was released. I'm shocked by that.
I mean, his gimmicks have not. They've been really bad gimmicks.
Since he went to Raw, it's just not worked out. And then they made him take out a toy spider,
it's since he goes solo. Every time he tries going solo, there was that one time where he sort of went against the Whites, and I was like, "Whoa, that was kind of cool." But that was it. It's like however long they give Bray Wyatt with his gimmicks, they give Harper, who's now moved, and Rowan about, I don't know, a tenth of that time.
He tried killing Roman Reigns. That I thought that was a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought that was one of the best storylines. Bischoff was heavily behind it, and I think that's one part that Hulk Hogan and Bischoff got a history of building long, compelling storylines. When he was undermining Daniel Bryan, and they were trying to take out Roman Reigns. That led to a very good storyline, and then the aftermath is that Drew McIntyre ended him. Ironically, that's how Dean Ambrose ended his career at Raw as well. I think there's too many
I
names.
think he had to leave, to be honest with you, because he was my favorite of the Shield, but he was being very much underused. They overdid his gimmick. I loved his gimmick, but they just made it look like he was useless as well. He deserves to be a bigger name. He's the world champ on AEW. But yeah. Well, we actually managed to scramble pretty much everything. And one quick thing is, so the French Grand Prix is, I think it's been postponed in F1. If not definitely, then it's about to be. That would have actually been the 10th postponement out of a total 22 races. For those of you out there who loosely watch F1, you have to complete 8 races in a season for it to become a valid World Championship season. As a result, and I think Sean mentioned this to me, Silverstone are potentially proposing conducting 2 races so that I don't know what the other race which country the other race would represent, but potentially doing 2 races to sort of account for another race to make sure that they're able to meet the requirements. Because obviously there's no guarantee that, other races after it, if indeed Silverstone does go ahead, might not also get cancelled or might not already have been cancelled. I don't know. It's a really nice gesture, but it's a fragile time and it's really hard for them to predict. Understandably, every single one of these places are dropping out in order, generally speaking, so it's sort of, as we're getting closer to our race, what are we going to do? Silverstone's British GP, I think, is usually in July, so 2 or 3 months left. So we'll have to watch this space in about a month or 2 to see where we're at. Right, that was a really, really packed show.
Can I ask when would they perhaps do the qualifying races on a Friday then? The Saturday and Sunday would be, which we presume will be when the races will be happening, or would they do? It's extraordinary.
For me, it makes sense. If you're going to do that, if you're going to double up, you may as well extend it to Thursday. Friday's usually a practice day. Why not just have like a practice day on the Wednesday, for example, and then have qualifying on the Thursday, the race for whatever you're going to call it on the Friday, and then another qualifying on Saturday, and then an actual race on Sunday. We need to be wary, of course, that there are other motorsports going on, and there are the lower Formula 2 and Formula 3s that go on in the same weekend. I think MotoGP does as well sometimes. So it wouldn't just be that. It would be a lot of others to cram in, but we will see. Right, on that note, I hope you guys have absorbed all that information. If you haven't, if you want to read up on it more, by all means. But don't forget, as always, leave a comment. Make sure you like the video. And nope, not going to point that way. Nope, it's that way. Don't forget, of course, to subscribe if you haven't already. Sean's gone for a very kind of dark, creepy shadow look there. I think it's safe for I think it's safe for everyone that we call it a night. But yeah, from the 2 of us, we'll see you guys tomorrow. See you later.